Hello, everyone. Here we are again in SysArt Consulting series of webinars. And this time we have another valuable guest, Bob Galen, who is an Agile practitioner, trainer, and coach based in Cary, North Carolina. And I would like to thank you, Bob, for being with us here. It's very nice that you accepted our invitation and you will share your insights with us. And we also have Suha, our founder of SysArt Consulting and our system artist, who is also contributing to the discussion. And the topic is one of hot topics these days, so I am sure that you're as curious as I am. The topic is that why companies fire Agile coaches. Is it the end of an Agile era? So I don't want to make it longer, and I would like to give my word to Bob first. And again, thanking him for being here with us. It's very valuable to us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me, for both of you. So let's dive in. I want to start with, I don't think it's the end of Agile. And Suha may have a different perspective, everyone, but I don't think it's the end of Agile as we know it. I do think it's maybe the end of an era, would be the way I think of it, but not the end of Agile. As I was preparing for this discussion, I was actually thinking in my mind that there might be three eras of Agile Scrum Masters, Agile coaching, Agile value, at least from my point of view. And I'll say the first era is early need, early value. So early need, and it started around 2000. So very early, Agile Manifesto, 2000, 2001. There were these folks who claimed to be Agile coaches. I don't think at the time anyone knew what an Agile coach was. And then Scrum Masters popped up too, early on in Scrum. So Scrum Masters, coaches, there were no RTEs or anything like that at that time. But I don't think companies knew what they were. If they did have them, they would hire them. It was that early need. It was unknown. It was ambiguous, and it went on for a while. And then I think around maybe 2010, as the methods stabilized, there's another era I'll call the trust the need. And so then people were trusting that, oh, we need an Agile coach or we need a Scrum Master. It was because the book said so, because Suha said so, because Bob Galen said so. And it was, but I don't know if they still understood. So there was early, I have a Scrum Master, I don't know what they do, and I don't know what their value proposition is. Then I think around 2010 to 2022, 23, there was this era where just trusting that it's the right thing to do. And I don't think that's our era. I think we're on the cusp of another era that says it's value-based need, what I would call value-based need, and there's not trust. And I think some organizations don't see the value in some of those roles. And we're seeing layoffs and things like that. Now, that's not an end. I still think organizations, leaders don't understand the value proposition of coaches. It's gotten better over time. Over those eras, it's gotten better, but I still don't think leaders, organizational leaders, understand the value of a Scrum Master or a coach over a developer. Does that make sense to everyone? So developer over here, Scrum Master, coach over here. I would actually say developer trumps the value of a manager as well in many organizations. So there's a value dissonance that's happening. And I think that's what's happening, value-based need. Now, not all organizations see it that way. There are actually some organizations. So here locally for me, I live in North Carolina. Fidelity is here. If anyone's ever heard of Fidelity Investments, and Fidelity is hiring coaches and hiring Scrum Masters. So they're growing there, but I think that type of organizational mindset has been declining in the last few years. So those are the eras. If you notice, I was talking about value. I think there's early need and value. I think one of the determinants is value. The other thing across these eras is I do think there's economic pressure going on. right? So the economy and technology it's not just affecting Agile, it's affecting everyone. So a lot of people are getting laid off now. So there's this economic downturn pressure in technology groups. I think folks overhired during COVID. They overhired remote workers and there's this reaction down. So that's compounding sort of the value. And I think the eras are focusing the downsizing to the agile roles that they don't understand the value proposition to, if that makes sense. But it's not just an agile target. It's affecting technology in general. So I want to circle back though. I think we're at a cusp of a change. And I'd like us to talk a little bit later about what we can do about it, maybe. Some questions could be, I think there's some things we need to refocus on as Agilists, and we can talk about that. But that's what I see. And I see it optimistically if we make some adjustments.
So,
Suha, any reaction, Suha?
yes.
Yeah, Bob, it makes sense what you have said until now, and we really need to figure out the reasons behind it, because this is a complex situation, and in complex environments, in complex systems, there is no such thing as a single root cause or for a problem. That's why we have a lot of reasons behind these trends that companies still getting layoff the agile coaches. So maybe starting with the historical development is a good idea, and I want to contribute it and grab the topic from there and come to another point of view. Uh, as you said, Agile started as a team level implementation. So it all started to enhance the teams to develop and deliver and to become more adaptable to changing situations. That's why it was about team level. But during the implementation within the organizations, we understood that we need to manage the dependencies and the communication requirements across different teams. That's why we need to develop a new approach, a new framework, a method, or something else to handle these dependencies across teams. And some scaling frameworks arise at that point, but they all tend to extend the team level strategies to the organizational level. But the requirement of the organizations was different. They need something to enhance their structure and contribute to becoming agile at a structural level. Because the first implementation of agile transformation, by the way, let me pause here because transformation is a big word. And transforming something that's related with human, which is the most difficult creature in the world. So it's really a big word. And the community, Agile community, claimed that they will transform the organizations and they will make them become agile, produce more, and be more effective within the markets. But it was not the reality, because we didn't do as a community. I'm by the way involving myself also. As a community, we didn't say anything about the structure, the system, and for example, let us think about the structural aspects of any organization. Performance evaluation system, roles and responsibilities, communication flows, backlog flows, reporting structure, and such things, etc. We can add more samples to this queue. So we didn't do anything at that side, and we just started implementing Scrum at team level, and we allowed and make free the teams to manage their own dependencies, but it didn't work. And somehow at that point, Scaled Agile framework fulfilled this gap and it was a sign for us, for the entire Agile community, that we need to develop something different, because SAFe fulfills that area in a way that we wouldn't want it. So that's why we only did, as a community, we only criticized that framework, and we didn't develop anything that can more contribute to Agile principles rather than SAFe. So that was the critical turn point for the market. And as you mentioned, Bob, the economical pressure increased within the last 2 years, and it had made a lot of impact, especially on the technological teams, technology sector. So, but when you compare it with the number of the layoffs in the field of Agile and the development, Agile is getting ahead, and I mean, the first title that the companies wanted to get rid of was Agile coaches and the Scrum Master. And I agree that it's related with the value that the Agile coaches created within the organization, or that the management of the organization understand from Agile in terms of value. That's related with that. That's why they thought that basically, okay, these are the people that don't create value for us. Then we have now the economical problems. Then that's why we need to cut the cost. Let's get rid of those people who don't create any value. They thought that, and that's why these are the main things. But let me pause here, Bob, and give the word to you. What do you think about these things?
I think you're right. I mean, I'm going to say yes and to what you said, Suha. It's as you were talking, I think there's a fundamental problem that we still have in that leaders, at least my view of leaders and working at the leadership level, so being a leader, a technology leader, and working and not just coaching, but working with leaders, I think we have a bad pattern, and we like to purchase solutions. So we like we like so I've suffered from this myself. Like I've purchased pre-safe, I've purchased frameworks for developing processes and developing software, and I thought that was an easy way. I could throw money at it, and and I thought it would generate success. And I think one of the problems that leaders make is you can purchase frameworks, but you also have to align mindset, if that makes sense. It's we're not dealing with robots, we're not dealing with AI, we're dealing with people and complex systems. And so frameworks plus, so I think there's still an anti-pattern that a lot of leaders fall into, is they try to buy a solution. And if it doesn't work out, they try to then either re-architect it or buy another one. Very often they'll go to consulting firms to buy a customized version of it, and they don't engage the people in the solutions, etc., and the mindset. And I think another mistake that I think the manifesto made in the beginning is we alienated leaders. We did, it was not inclusive of management and leadership, if that makes sense, right? So we sort of put these very folks, instead of opening our tent and saying please be part of Agile, we marginalized them and put them on the other side of the fence. But they're the decision makers. They're they're the they're the architects of the organization, and I think that was a mistake as well. So I think there's those two factors. I want to challenge you with one thing, uh, and it's I think sometimes complexity. This stuff is very complex, but I think the way to attack it is with group-based thinking. So sort of creating a learning organization, if you will. So it's really complex if a if a CTO says, I have to solve this problem. That's incredibly complex. But if that leader facilitates organizational design and development at a group level, then it takes that complexity, and I think it can be much more simple. So the way we're attacking things is complex, but I think there's actually some simple things like including leaders, focusing on value, right? Not being intimidated by the complexity, but embracing it, and then leaning into simplicity. So I agree with everything you said, but I wanted to bring in those other sort of thoughts. What are your reactions?
Yeah, these kinds of discussions or events should be made more in order to make a self-reflection for the community, because everything you said made me think a lot of things. So this is a really problem that we can't find any recipe for that. There is no one way for any solution, and also we can't compare all the ways that we start to implement any change or transformation at company. That's why this is really complex, and involving people is really important for introducing any change to any society. That's why I took as a very valuable insight from your speech. That's really important. But turning from the very basics of any transformation, first of all, we are here today because we don't understand complexity as a community. We need to be aware of that, because we are still seeking, as you said, by the way, managers trying to purchase solution, but there is no solution. That this is bad news. But there are alternatives for that. This is good news. We have a lot of methods and tools to implement anything or to work on any system. That's why these tools can help, and in a complex situation, we need to use more than one tools to impact on the system. That's why allowing people to discuss on that, involving people for creating a new environment, and allowing again people to self-organize to introduce the change to the organization is critical. So and taking from this point the discussion and coming to the agile coaches, I would kindly suggest all the agile coaches not to seek recipes for any situation, because it doesn't help you to coach the teams, or it doesn't help the teams to improve, to learn, and try to understand the complexity, the components of the system, and try to understand and figure out the relations between the components of that system, because everything is turning around the relation between the components of the system. That's why if you have a chance to understand what they are doing, how they affect each other, and the dependencies. So as I said, we have a lot of tools to do that, like dependency mapping and impact mapping, a lot of tools to understand how they interact together. That's why the main thing is that. And also, if you don't implement such a transformation at organization level, agile coaches will be stuck between the agile and the organizational impediments, because at some point, if they help team to improve, at some point, the organizational impediments will prevent them to go further, and will most probably take them back to the beginning point. And that's why generally agile coaches feel that we don't know how to coach teams. We can help them, and they don't improve, and they create some metrics like velocity, and just looking at the metrics, they try to understand if the team is developing or improving continuously, but it's not that. Maybe your problem is not about team level. Maybe your problem is about another broader system that specifically that teams belongs. I mean the organization. That's why without working on the organizational impediments and without introducing structural change to the organization, Agile coaches will still keep feeling that they are not helpful or they are not creating value or not helping to the teams. That will not change. That's why, as an Agile coach, you are responsible to make visible the organizational impediments. Maybe you don't have the power to solve all the organizational impediments or problems, but you have the tools and the power to make them visible to the management and the entire organization.
I'm struggling with my mute. I like your last point. I was coaching some. I belong to a lean coffee, and we were talking. So a coach that coaches lean coffee, and we were talking about a coaching scenario where a Scrum Master coach was talking about some problems with their team, and as we explored it in the group, it turned out that I think more of the problem was in the organization, or more of the problem was systemic than the team. Now that coach was focusing on the team, and they weren't making much progress there. And a lot of the suggestions were, it's so to me, it's coaches need to be coaching in multi directions. Now you have to have the skills and the courage and the ability to do that, but to do that more systemic coaching. And this coach was actually not doing that. And I could tell that they were resistant. It was, I think, psychological safety, and safety was an issue in the organization, but still they were not going to solve anything by coaching the team. So having that systemic view, I think for everyone is really important. I just wanted to amplify that. The other thing, when you talk about dependencies, I forget who it was. I think it was Esther Derby. Well, I was talking to her, or she wrote something about scaling. Very early, a very brief article or paper on scaling, and it was before the frameworks or early in the frameworks. And she said something like, dependencies are the enemy. So the top three things that you have to solve these three things. And I think it was organizational collaboration was one. And I think not even managing, that's the wrong word, but being aware of dependencies, connecting dependencies. Dependencies are the enemy. You'll never reduce them to zero. She was like, but you have to be aware of them. It's going to be a really large impediment as Agile scales. It's in the small, it's a problem. In the large, it's a huge problem. So I just wanted to amplify that for everyone, that dependencies are the enemy, and it's something to focus on. But why don't we take a few questions, maybe? I see some questions popping in. Do you want to do that?
There are a lot of comments and questions already, so we can maybe start with Amy Stevens.
Yeah.
She asked, how do we close that gap between the management and the value being mentioned? Those in executive have maybe never worked in an Agile team, and in spite of seeing positive feedback, they seem to sometimes miss the continuous development aspect. We are now Agile, so why do we need Agile focus?
Yeah. First of all, Bob, excuse me, I jumped in because this is something that whenever I see such comments coming from executives, especially, I would like to say that Agile is not something that you can be. Agile is something that you can become. And this is not my own phrase, by the way. I have to give the name James Coplin. So I saw one of his speech that he was saying this sentence, and it's really important to understand what he is trying to mean by this. If you think that as an organization we are now agile, that means you are not agile. Agile is something that you can become more, and it is related with continuous improvement. It is not a state of organization at some point. It is the progress of organization. It is the way they are handling the processes and progresses within the organization. So that's why I jumped and sorry, Bob. Let me give you the word.
No, you're fine. I think that question though,
Mhm,
I want to flip that question around. I
mhm,
think as agilists, our first job is not to turn executives into agilists.
mhm,
Our first job should be to be curious about their business, to be curious about their outcomes and their goals, and then to help them understand how Agile can help them achieve those goals. I see so many Agile coaches and they look at if you listen to them and if you look at how they're behaving and how they're communicating, it's about converting someone into Agile. It's
mhm.
almost like if I could program that executive to know what I know, everything would be good. Life would be good. No, that's the wrong. Agile is not the point. Business results is the point. Optimization is the point. Meeting them respectfully where they are is the point of a coach. And then leveraging your agile mindset to help move them along. So I think that's a huge mistake. And
Mhm.
we as coaches, we actually shouldn't be using agile speak to begin with. We should be we shouldn't say anything. Like Suha, you should never mention
Yeah.
Scrum or Kanban or SAFe. I mean, we should be talking about what outcomes are you looking for? What are your challenges? What are your ROI target? What pressure are you under? And maybe even establishing a relationship with our stakeholders, getting to know them personally a little bit, and then helping, and then trying to guide them.
Mhm.
So it's just a flip in our thinking. I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, that's really important, Bob, that you said. I mean, trying to convince the executives to introduce them the real meaning of agile will not help you in this uh, context. So we need to show outcomes, and as Bob said, that's really important. We need to focus on the value and the outcomes rather than implementing any framework or using the phrase like agile or another buzzwords, so that will not help because uh, that will create a reaction also. I mean, they will behave in a different way that we wouldn't want them to do. So that's why the only thing that we can show to executives is outcome. To do that, we need to create outcome. Uh, Without creating it, we can't show.
Exactly. Hey, I see Burson Ozer. If I
Y-
said something,
Yes.
aren't the agile coaches who fed the idea of purchasing a solution in the first place? Sad face. I agree with you, Burson. So I'll couch that with the agile coaches who didn't know what they were talking about, or maybe halfway understood. It's actually easy as a coach to provide these canned solutions. I think it's much harder to do what Suha's talking about and meeting each client engagement as a complex system and helping them craft their solutions, their approaches, move their culture, uh, and meet them where they are. So again, coaches along the way to this day, coaches, I think some coaches make that mistake. I think the average coaches or the mediocre coaches do that. I think the better coaches understand that you don't throw canned solutions at problems and successfully help your clients.
There are also comments that would you like me to read the comments as well, or just focus on the questions?
Whatever.
So, okay, so I would say that there is, for example, Michael V asks, what do you think the impact of non-IT agile coaches has had on the agile community?
I can start I think what Michael means by non-IT Agile coaches is what I would call professional Agile coaches or ICF Agile coaches, coaches who are certified under International Coaching Federation, who apply just a coaching stance. I think that's safe ground. There has been an influx of coaching stance centric coaches entering the Agile space. I think the problem, Michael, is if that's the only stance they have, I think that's a problem. If, for example, they can't provide consulting advice, if, for example, they have no organizational development experience, OD experience, if they have no systemic awareness, they do systemic coaching, but they don't have systems modeling and systems awareness, then I actually think they can do harm. If you've ever heard that, there's a phrase in the US, like if the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
Mhm.
And I think that's euphemistically that can be a problem. So if I'm a professional coach and that's my primary tool, that's really not a good model to meet technology agile coaching.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And all these are reasons, and all the questions and comments and our speech uh, are related with each other. I mean, if you don't implement organizational change, or if you don't touch anything regarding the structure of the organization, then you will be stuck between the team level implementation and organizational impediments. Then this will also reduce the quality of coaching, because you don't know what to do, or this is a big challenge for you as a coach, and rather you are a non-IT agile coach, or um, I don't know, coming from a Scrum team or an Agile team, and with a background, IT background, it doesn't matter, because the position that you are existing in the middle of the position, that you can't solve it by yourself. And as an Agile coach, this challenge will most probably reduce the quality of the coaching you provide to organization or to the team. It's not a must, but you can do something that you can create some value to that organization. That's definitely there are things to do at that position, but this challenging situation, systemic problem, reduces the contribution of the coaches, an average coach, I mean, with an average experience and average knowledge, the contribution of the coaches reduces, or uh, their efforts will not be visible for the organization, because in a broken system, nothing works well. Don't forget that. Within a broken system, and people, especially the executives, will try to find something to blame. That's why the blaming culture arises in that organization, because they don't understand that all the problems are related with their broken system. They don't know this. They are not aware of this. That's why they are trying to figure out who is the responsible for this problem. And here that the blaming game starts. That's why it's really difficult for the agile coaches to their job in such an environment, I think. So maybe we can also add at this point that we are not blaming the community, we are not blaming the coaches, we are just trying to identify some improvement points for the community. So this is important, because it is all about perspective.
Right.
We have this perspective most with Bob, I think.
So I want to touch on, Karen, with your permission, there's a LinkedIn user that entered a comment at 124, And
Yeah.
then Amy Stevens entered a comment as well. And it's sort of going to, what do we do? What can we do?
Yeah.
I have a general proposal.
Mhm.
I don't think leaders know. Let me tell a story real quickly. So I do a podcast with a friend of mine, Josh Anderson. Josh and I have been operating in agile context for 15 or 20 years. For a number of years, Josh was hiring scrum masters. He's a senior leader. He was a CTO of a company, and he would hire scrum masters, but he only hired it. He was in that era that I talked about. That, what was it? The trust era, where he hired scrum masters and coaches, but he didn't know what they did, and he didn't know their value proposition. And we would talk occasionally. He's like, Bob, I don't know what the heck a scrum master does. What value do they? I mean, I've hired them, and they're nice people, and they seem to make the team happy, but the good ones. But he's like, I don't know what they're doing for the bottom line and results, etc. And he said, I have a hard time justifying it. So it's just sort of a necessary evil. And he and I would debate it, and we would argue, because I have a different view. I think scrum masters add good ones. Good ones add incredible value. Good coaches. And it turned out that Josh had never seen a good one. Does that make sense to everyone? I don't think he saw a good one. And then one day he saw a good one in action. He was lucky enough to hire one. He inherited one. His company did a merger, and he came running to me, and he's like, Bob, I know what a scrum master does now. He says, and they don't just run stand-ups. And I'm like, yeah, I've been trying to tell you that forever, and you didn't listen. He's like, they can help me reframe the organization. I was like, of course they can, right? And he was looking at the system, the coaching aspects of a scrum master. So my point is, what to do if you've been laid off or whatnot. I think the key thing is to show organizations. We need to show organizations what badass coaches look like, and what badass scrum masters look like. And I don't know if very many companies and leaders know that. I don't think we've shown them that. So what I'm saying is, go back and learn. And if you're not well-rounded enough, then you better work really hard. Like, if you're a scrum master and you have no domain experience, you better go get some domain experience so that you can complement your skills, so that you can show your leaders and your organization and your teams what good looks like. I think we've lived in, as we've grown, everyone wanted to become a scrum master and a coach, so we've increased this mediocrity curve. We need to do something about that. So show them what good looks like. And if you're not good, then learn and become good. And then show them what great looks like. Suha, what do you think? Are you going to argue with me about that? I don't know.
I totally agree. Maybe, I mean, it's really hard to find something to do, and for the agile coaches or for the rest of the community, because first of all, as a community, we need to increase these kinds of events to discuss and what we have done wrong. And I mean, we need to do retrospective. So for our entire community, because we are not really, to be honest, we are not really doing good. So when you compare it with the previous era with the agile, so we are growing. That's one thing. We are not that bad. We still keep growing and learning and improving. But on the other hand, we should be better. That's why we need to discuss honestly, and we need to try to find some new ways that we are doing our jobs in the fields. That's important for me, I think. So another thing, again, as a community, we need to stop using these buzzwords, starting with agile. So it really doesn't help to anyone to use. I mean, we have been discussing agile for 20 years, and we still didn't come up with a solution what the agile thing is. So we still keep discussing. So we need to stop this, and we need to discuss more how to create value, how to create real outcome for the companies. So we need to focus on this, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel again and again, because we have some tools, and we need data, more data, more case studies, and more samples to show the entire community what's going on with these things. So, for example, nowadays people are discussing about story points. So everyone found the guilty to blame in the community. The worst method is planning poker, and let's kick planning poker out of Agile community. that can be, by the way. I'm not trying to humiliate anything, but why we are discussing this, or if we want to discuss this, do we have data about that? Do we have any research? Nobody talks about these things in the community. So we have to change our perspective and approach to any situation that we are talking about. This is one thing, I think, a very fundamental change for the Agile community.
I want to quickly touch on something about value. I've seen a lot of coaches. So in the States here, Capital One is a famous example of a company that laid off coaches and scrum masters and in April, probably March, April of last year, I think. And like 1,500, 1,600 folks. And a lot of, and they had Jira, and they were showing a lot of trends or data, but it still didn't stick to the leaders. So I think a lot of Agile coaches make the mistake that they just install Jira, and they try to let the data speak for itself. And the data is really important, but I think there's also perception and relationship building. So as coaches, you should get to know your sponsor. You should get to know your stakeholders. You should create a relationship with them and create empathy with them. It's not just showing them the data and saying, look at the great things my team did. You should pay me more money. So that may resonate with some of them, and it may not connect with others. Actually, most senior leaders do not, in my experience, they don't make layoffs based on data. They make layoffs based on gut feeling, on perceived value. So what I'm telling you as coaches is you need to play on both sides of the fence. You can't just play on one side of the fence. And the perceived value is relationship building. Remember Josh in my story? Data did not convince Josh of this. He observed the difference a Scrum Master made organizationally. That's what clicked for him. He had data charts all over the place. It was the behavior. It was the soft skills, and it was the impact that the roles can have organizationally to results, to what Suha's talking about, outcomes, right? So don't make that data, the data will speak for itself mistake. That's a huge mistake that many coaches are making.
I totally agree. So I see another comment coming from Griffin. I'm not afraid to fire the client because they are making it too hard to be a good coach and let me grow and get better. I choose not to work with you on your problem under these conditions. Okay. So
we have another question, which is also like a trendy topic. And how are we getting prepared to confront AI era? One of LinkedIn user asked, how would be the transformation? What skills do we need to learn? What do we need to improve? What fields do we need to look into? So,
I mean, one reaction I have is there's something called the Agile coaching. So if we focus on Agile coaching or coaching, and I think this covers Scrum Masters and coaches, but it also covers general change agents. There's something called the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel that you all can find with a Google search. And the growth wheel talks about the competencies of a coach. Remember, I said earlier that a lot of coaches made the mistake of only leaning into professional coaching stance or competency. There's many more competencies to effective coaching. One of them is lean agile experience and domain experience. There's quite a few agile coaches who have very little domain experience. That's actually not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is they don't work to improve that weakness over time. And they need to develop that. They need to be, self-aware and humble to realize that they need to develop themselves in a well-rounded fashion. And so what I would suggest is there's a free assessment online where any of you can assess your coaching skills and competencies. I don't care what your role is. I would suggest doing it. And then getting a readout and then looking at where are you weak as it compares to what your job is or your role is. And then work hard to then improve in some of those areas. So what I would call it competency improvement. I don't see I think a lot of agilists are not coachable, or let me say this, we're not all walking our talk. We want the people we're coaching to be continuous learners, but then when we look in the mirror, we may not be a continuous learner. We want all the prestige and the money, but are we putting in the heavy lifting to develop ourselves? I know that Suha is doing that. You can tell that by if you think about systemic organization, that he could be learning that for 20 more years, 30 more years. There's a lot to learn there. And that's, and being relentlessly curious about learning. So I would suggest that we all need to put on that relentless curiosity hat. That is if we want to become badass, right? If you want to be mediocre, that's fine. And that's the differentiator. There's another question, I think, from Raven. She was talking about salary levels. I don't think you're going to get high salaries if you're a mediocre coach. So I think there's a commoditization for just average folks. And I think, they're losing their jobs because the value proposition is there. If you want to differentiate yourself, it's a skill and competency play. You have to develop that, and you have to do it relentlessly do that.
Yeah. For individual coaches, and I have different suggestions for the organizations and the people who have the right to to make a decision for the entire, the executives. I have different suggestions for them, but for the agile coaches, the curiosity, yes, that's important. The most important thing, most probably, because if you accept that you need to keep learning, it makes a really difference. And in my career, I worked with more than 200 Scrum teams for approximately 15 years. And as Bob said, a single life will not be enough to learn what I want to learn. That's why maybe I need a second life to do that. I don't know if the second life will be enough to learn everything. So, but the most important thing for the agile coaches and Scrum Masters is to go beyond the conventional thinking and the linear traditional type of cause effect thinking will not help you to identify problems and to solve the problems. That's why you need to see the underlying structural reasons and to understand how the system works and how they affect, how the components of the system affect each other. So there are some circular systemic causes. You need to identify the parts of the system and try to understand the relations. So one part of the system and the other part is human. That's why if we talk about any human-related system, we need to think about the human side of the problem. That's one another thing, and your coaching skills will help to understand what people react and behave within that specific system. So The other thing, we don't need to blame any person for anything, and behavior is just a result of the system, and behavior is not just a result, but mostly a reflection of the system, the structure. That's why I mean, I come across a lot of agile coaches. They are saying that, okay, our middleware management can't adapt to agile mindset and another buzzword. So, and they don't aware, but they are blaming some people not to adapt to changing conditions. That's not true. If there is a adaptation problem, or if there is a resistance to change, it's not about the people. It is about the way you handle the transformation. It is about you, your way. You need to think about your improvement points for your transformation itself. So another suggestion, and what you can do, you need to make a difference, as Bob said. That's important. If you don't make a difference, I mean, the trend will not turn to reverse. That's really important. As a community, we need to make, but it will all start from individual coaching. And we have a lot of tools, by the way. You will most probably need to use some of them in some contexts, but please don't memorize any methodology, and don't try to implement anything blindly by the book. So it will not help. It is all about contexts. You need to understand the context, the environment the situation occurs. You need to feel that, smell that, and you need to create your action according to the context. My suggestion is that.
There's two things that, as Suha was talking, that inspired me, or that I noted. One is it's as a change agent. So not as coaches, scrum masters, but we're change agents. We're change champions. Is the most important way that you can make a difference is showing people the change, or what I would call role modeling. The most powerful coaching stance to me is role model. And it's also the most hard because I have to actually walk my talk. So for example, if I'm trying to coach on psychological safety, then the question is, am I showing psychological safety? And if I'm trying to talk to leaders about trusting their teams, am I trusting the leaders? Am I meeting people with respect? Am I meeting leaders and teams where they are, etc.? And then the other thing he said is make a difference. And I said it, he amplified it, I want to amplify it again. But it's not a difference to you. We don't determine the difference. The difference is to your client's agenda, not yours. Too often we bring our agenda to whoever we're coaching in whatever role. It's we want to do this. It's their agenda. It's role modeling. It's serving the client. It's oh, I'm a servant leader. No, well, maybe are you? Then serve your client. What's their agenda? Do you understand it? And then how are you helping them achieve their agenda? Leverage. And I said that early at the beginning. We only have a few minutes left, so I don't know, Sarah, Karen, how we want to land. Maybe some fine.
So there is some discussion going on. Maybe you could like to check that it's about the terrorists that, for example, Michael, they are talking about their favorite terrorists. And then, for example, Brian Link says, I'm constantly surprised at the lack of depth and breadth of coaches and Scrum Masters, not knowing Deming, not knowing the Toyota production system, not even watching Henrik's Agile product ownership in a nutshell. So there is such a discussion going on.
That amplifies what I was saying. I don't know if we're humble learners in general. Once we've achieved something, a lot of people stop. Like I've noticed Griffin Jones he's talking about Jerry Weinberg. I mean, Jerry Weinberg is a giant in not in the Agile space, in the software development management leadership space. And in the consulting space, his secrets of consulting are gems, and consulting is a skill that all of us should have, or providing advice. And I would agree with that, and Deming, etc.
Yeah.
We stand on the shoulders of giants, but
Yeah.
so many of us don't know that we stand and don't honor them. So I would agree with that thread. Is everyone become a student of early Agile and early Agile influencers, and you may learn something.
Maybe I can add one thing more about this discussion. Is it the reason that we have these agile coaching problems today, or is it the result of what we have done since the beginning? I think both of them, because we create those kinds of agile coaches by the community, and those kinds of agile coaches also destroys the brand of, or the name of, agile. So yes, we need to identify some new ways to make them help in the field. So it's really important, and a good discussion, by the way, to make people aware what's going on in reality in the market. So thanks for contributing to all person.
I'm going to chime in with a final word. Maybe Suha, you can as well. Like the final piece of advice for me, and this may sound self-serving, but it's not. It's not. Is I think everyone who's listening, you should have a coach. So I don't care what your title is. You should have a coach or coaches, and you should be a coach. You should have a mentor, and you should be a mentor. And I think and systemic thinking. So I'll leave you with those things. Have a coach, be a coach. Have a mentor, be a mentor, and think systemically. And I'm not just saying that. It's incredibly important. Remember that story I talked about earlier, that Scrum Master who was coaching downward too far, right? He was missing the system. 80% of the issues were at a system level, and he wasn't even looking there or aware of there or skilled there. And that's very typical in my experience.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thank you. My last words are about the end of era. It is not end of the agile era, but it is end of the low quality coaching era. So it's now time to start a new type of coaching and new type of approach to agile. That's why the market will demand itself this new type of systemic agile coaching from the community, and I hope we will fulfill this requirement as a community.
Thank you for this lovely discussion, Bob and Suha. Now we're out of time, but thank you. And I learned myself a lot, and I'm sure the audience have enjoyed that as well. And thanks for also thanks the audience for listening and being here.
Thank you very much. And thank you,
everyone.
Bob.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.